Good evening, everybody. It's Lisa. I wanted to make a recording this week because I just want to reiterate the fact that week 5 and week 6 material will be open now for 2 weeks. So it's really the same material. We're going to be covering fat and cardiovascular disease. And the reason it's open for 2 weeks is because it's two separate chapters in your book. So the PowerPoint or the PDF, whichever one you use, is going to encompass really the information in both chapters. So, and it is kind of complicated, I think, between the two, so I'm keeping it open for 2 weeks. There is nothing due this week, and next week, week 6, is when I will open the discussion up for these particular chapters. The discussion will be about omega-3s, and you'll see that open up next week. But I just want to walk you through a couple of points. I don't know how long the audio is going to be, maybe up to 15 minutes, but I just want to point out a couple of things in the PowerPoint because I find this topic to be somewhat confusing. There are just certain points in it tend to be a little bit confusing, and I'd like to just clarify and kind of jump to the PowerPoint and some of the points that I find that students have struggled with sometimes. This is going to be your week 6 discussion, which you actually cannot access right now. But you've got your lecture, a couple of different links this week, which we'll go into. This is the American Heart Association, and then this is just optional reading. I think it's very interesting. The New York Times article, it's called "What If It's All Been a Big Fat Lie?" It was a huge article in the New York Times and kind of turned the nutrition world upside down. So here's their article, and after the New York Times came out with this article, which a lot of people found really inflammatory, CSPI countered that article. So if you read this, you definitely need to read this. Okay? I just want to highlight a couple of points here in the PowerPoint, and I'm not going to go through all of them. All of this information is important, but I'm going to skip to this slide. We're talking about all different kinds of fats. And one area that I find that students get confused about is that you have cholesterol in food, and then you have the cholesterol that is measured in the blood. And this slide highlights the difference between food cholesterol and blood cholesterol, but even still, I think it's still a little bit confusing. So food cholesterol. Cholesterol, by the way, is only found in animal products. It does not exist at all in the plant world. So if you cut out animal products, you will by default cut out all cholesterol. Cholesterol is very important in our bodies. It is the main component of many different important things, but we do not need to take any at all from our diet. Our body can manufacture all the cholesterol we need. So, the recommendation for cholesterol coming from food is 300 a day. That is not optimal. It is absolutely maximum. Now, if somebody is at high risk for cardiovascular disease, that number is lowered to 200. And I go into, in the PowerPoint, who is at risk for cardiovascular disease. This is also going to be patients with diabetes. People with diabetes are at higher risk for cardiovascular disease, and therefore their cholesterol recommendation coming from food is going to be 200 milligrams a day max. The other thing that's important to distinguish is that when we eat cholesterol from food, it's not either good cholesterol or bad cholesterol like we associate when we talk about cholesterol found in the blood, which we'll look at in a minute over here. There is no good and bad cholesterol. When we eat it, it's just the same. Now, when we eat cholesterol in food, and when we eat fat in general, saturated fat, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, that has an effect on our blood cholesterol. So our blood cholesterol is when you go to the doctor, they'll draw blood and they'll measure how much circulating cholesterol you have in the bloodstream. And in that case, you've got total cholesterol, and that is pretty much a fraction of HDL, this good cholesterol, and the bad cholesterol, the LDL. Okay? So just take some time to kind of understand that and work through that. Fatty acids, there's 4. There's saturated, there's trans. These are the two that are normally associated with the bad cholesterol. So saturated fat and trans fats being the absolute worst. There is no safe consumption of trans fat. Saturated fat, there is a range that is okay to eat every day, but these are the two, saturated and trans, that are the unhealthy types of fats. And then you've got the unsaturated, which includes monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. And those are the two kinds of fats that we associated with having a more positive effect on the heart. Okay? All foods are comprised of all of these fats in one. There is no food that is just one kind of fat. I think we think of something like butter being saturated fat, but the fact is, and you'll see one of the last slides on this PowerPoint shows that butter is like 66% saturated fat, but it does have some mono and poly. Interestingly, coconut oil is 99% saturated fat. So while coconut may have some other health benefits, if you're talking about it straight in terms of cholesterol and affecting cholesterol and heart health, it has the highest saturated fat of any fat. So just something to keep in mind. Again, trans fats, really bad. Every health association says keep your trans fats as close to zero as possible every day. Digestion. The American Heart Association, this number has just changed, says that anywhere between 20 to 35% of your calories can come from fat. The reason I'm stopping here is I want to show you, if you go up to 35% of your calories coming from fat, it is not appropriate to go this high if most of your fat, or a large portion of your fat, is coming from saturated or trans. You can have a high fat intake, which is considered to be around 35%, if the predominant fat in your diet is coming from the healthy sources, the mono, the polyunsaturated fat, which includes the omega-3s and things like that. Okay? This kind of reiterates that. These are the risk factors for CHD, coronary heart disease, or cardiovascular disease, same thing. I'm going to show you this is the other slide with risk factors. A low HDL, this is one of those numbers from cholesterol. HDL is cholesterol, LDL is cholesterol, this is the good, this is the bad. Let me just show you, you guys have this on D2L. This is just kind of going into the numbers. I'm looking at HDL right now. A man or a woman wants, the HDL, the higher the better. 60 milligrams per deciliter or above is ideal, and the higher from there, the better. They differentiate. For women, they want to have it no less than 50, and for men, no less than 40. The reason they say no less than 50 for women is because when women go through menopause, their HDL has the potential to really plummet, and their cholesterol, total cholesterol, really increases. So they want women starting off at a higher baseline to mitigate that drop that's going to happen usually during menopause. So remember, HDL, the higher the better. LDL is a little bit variant because it depends on somebody's risk factors. So look at all these different risk factors. It depends on what risk factors the person has for cardiovascular disease, and then the doctor will recommend where they want you to be with LDL. Okay, so just look that through. Triglycerides, this is another reading that the doctor will take when they get a lipid panel from a patient. Triglycerides, the higher they are, the stickier the blood tends to be, and also prone to clotting. So these are the ideal numbers there. And then here are total blood cholesterol numbers. Okay? So it's not enough to just know total cholesterol. You need to know the fractions here, because someone can have a 200 milligram per deciliter blood cholesterol, or let's say 210, but if their HDL is 70, 80 milligrams per deciliter, we're not nearly as worried about that 210 cholesterol than if it's 210 and somebody has a 40 milligram per deciliter in terms of HDL. Then they're going to be at high risk. Okay, let me just see. Okay, so this is some benefits of a high HDL. Sorry, let's see. Number one ways to reduce cholesterol. One of the best ways to reduce cholesterol is overall weight loss. Um, and then just targeting the negative fats. If you don't want to get so into the numbers of how much, trans, how much saturated, just try to educate your patients on sources of the bad fats and the sources of the good fats. And in general, just try to limit the bad and enhance the good. So the bad is going to be the trans and the saturated. And here we talk about, trans, where you can find it. And I would say, when you're looking through this PowerPoint, please make sure to look through the whole slide because they go into a little bit more. This is, here is going to be saturated fat. Where do you find saturated fat? So just try to limit those sources, okay? Where do you find cholesterol in food? Everything here is going to be because of an animal product. You see egg noodles, well, the cholesterol is coming from the egg. You see salmon's got some cholesterol, but salmon also has so many other beneficial things like omega-3s that I would say salmon would be a good choice, whereas maybe a beef patty or something like that may not have as much beneficial other fats, when you're talking about heart health. Good fats, think plant fats, avocados, nuts, vegetable oils, monounsaturated. I want you guys to just kind of go through this yourself. I just want to see if there's any other highlights. This just shows here that, for instance, like I was talking about, beef fat, we think of saturated, but it's actually 52% saturated, 43% mono, and 4% poly. So just something to be mindful of. This summary map of impact of dietary fat and cholesterol, this is linked on D2L. This is what I was talking about. I'm sorry for it being kind of not the best copy. This is a very complicated thing, and this is my best way of giving you a synopsis of it. These are all the different types of fats, saturated. Where are the sources? Animal products and coconut and palm oils. Don't forget, not only are animal products a rich source of saturated, but the tropical oils too. So this is giving you the food sources and then what it does in your blood. Saturated raises total and LDL. Remember, that's the bad kind. Over here we've got trans. Here are some of the major sources. And the reason that trans is so bad, not only does it raise total cholesterol and the bad, but it lowers that good HDL, whereas saturated does not do that. That's why trans fats is so bad. And then here talking about poly, mono, where it comes from and what it does. And you're going to see there's going to be some crossover. You've got some omega-3 and some omega-6 in soybean. So not, like I said before, not each fat doesn't exclusively have one kind of omega-3, omega-6, mono. They all have combinations. Okay, and lastly, again, please look over the whole PowerPoint. It's all important. This last link on D2L, we talk about fish when we talk about fats and the omega-3s and how it's the best source of omega-3s. Even though, yes, you can get omega-3s from plants, they are not the richest source of omega-3s, and they do not convert in the body as efficiently as fish omega-3s do. But there's then always the question of, number one, mercury, and then also sustainability in terms of what kinds of fish. So this Monterey Bay Aquarium is a great resource if you want to Google them and go to their website. They give you tons more information. This is kind of in terms of sustainability, what are the best, good, and avoid. And then the asterisk, the red asterisk, is telling you to limit those because of potential contamination with mercury. Okay? So that's it. Have a great week. Again, nothing specific due this week except reading through all of this. Make sure you understand it. And then next week on Monday, we will open up week 6 discussion. So let me know if you have any questions. And by the way, your test answers are up. By the time you'll be listening to this, you can go back to the test and look at all the correct answers.